to the second lesson on blues comping. So in the first lesson we looked at simple chord substitution ideas, and essentially what I was looking at, we were in the key of E, and I was looking at different chord substitution things you can do over a static chord or a chord that is prolonged for a period of time. And go through my videos and you'll find that one. What I want to look at now is moving through the blues and how you can use chord substitutions when you actually have a harmonic progression that's moving somewhere. So I'm going to break the blues up into sections. We're going to look at just the first 4 bars. One of the really common things that all bluesers have is that by bar 5 they move to the 4 chord. And there's a longer departure. Some bluesers will go to chord 4 and bar 2, but that is just a temporary thing. So what we want to look at here is what can you do to sustain interest over the first 4 bars, and how can you make that departure to A, in the case here because we're in E, seem more musically interesting and create a little bit more tension and therefore get a better resolution. And the answer to that is inserting a 2-5. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the term a 2-5, a 2-5-1 is one of the most common chord progressions that you'll find in Western music. And what it refers to is a chord that is built off the 2nd degree of a scale, then a chord that is built off the 5th degree of the scale, and that gives you this extremely strong resolution back to the 1 chord. So if we're talking about A, because that's the chord we're going to, the 2 of A would be B. A chord based off that would be a B minor. The 5 chord would be an E. A 7th chord, an E7. And then it would resolve to an A. So what we want to have when we're doing those first 4 bars is we play the 2-5 of the chord we're going to. So even though A is technically the 4 chord in the key of E, for the 2 bars that we're going to be on that the 2 bars we're going to be on that A chord, we want to think of it as being the 1. In classical music they call this tonicization, which is a micromodulation. So therefore we have to play the 2 and the 5 of the chord we're going to. This is also known as applied dominant chords or secondary dominant theory. It's not that complicated. You just have to work out okay, what chord am I going to? Temporarily going to think of that as 1. What would, if that's 1, the 2 would be this chord and the 5 would be this chord. So that means we now have, of those 4 bars that are assigned to E, the band can still be playing that, okay? We don't have to necessarily do everything the band's playing. In the 4th bar, we are going to have 2 beats of B minor, 2 beats of E7, and then we go to A. So it would be this. If I'm just going to do simple Freddie Green style comping, we have then that works. That's purely functional. It is a good way of comping if there's no one else other than rhythm guitar, like in gypsy jazz or swing stuff. But it's not that interesting as backup with the rest of the band, or if you're going to do something that involves chord melody in your own solos. So what we want to look at is coming up with a melody that uses just notes from the chords that we're going to play, or notes from E blues or E mixolydian, which is the scale that you would probably be using in this context, and then how you can tack that onto chord voicings you are already playing. And then this is going to give you a really hip sound. Even if the bass isn't necessarily following you with the changes, what we're getting is forward motion, and the end always justifies the means in Western music. So I can play stuff that's maybe, if you were to freeze the beat and vertically analyze what's happening, like the melody I play, the chord I'm playing, and how it relates to the bass note, it might not work. But in motion, it works because I will resolve at the right time, and I will create tension. And music is all about drama. It's the tension and release that makes it interesting. So when I'm playing that B minor 7 chord, rather than doing like your standard, I would probably never play a bar chord like this. It just doesn't have the right sound. But rather than playing like a standard jazz voicing, I'm interested in the upper extensions, like a B minor 9, a B minor 11, There's another B minor 9, B minor 7 like this, B minor 7 like that. And how I can come up with melodies that use essentially the notes of the arpeggio with some passing notes. So I could have something like that's far too long for the time that we have, but that's an example of something that I could play. Same thing when I go to the E7 chord. Playing just a standard E7 is going to sound a little bit bland, particularly seeing as the one chord of the whole tune we're in is an E7. So I'd be inclined to turn it into an altered chord. And with the altered chord, there are a couple of great extensions I can use. I can do extensions are based off the 1, so you can have flat 9, raise 9, and off the 5, you can have flat 5, raise 5. So let's just explore a potential melodic idea that we could have. We could do something that goes like this. So that's just a cool melody. All of those notes are in the key of E, or using the E dominant 7th scale. And you can harmonize them with notes from those chords. So if I take a B minor scale, I'm going to slide. Then when we go up to this extension here, this is the 4th of a B minor chord. So I could harmonize that with a B minor chord underneath it and get an 11th, or I could harmonize it with a diminished chord. So any chord tone or any degree of a scale that isn't 1 through 5 or 7, you can harmonize with a diminished chord. This is based off Wes Montgomery's principles of chord melody. Or one's got a slightly spicier sound. Then we're going to get to the E. So when we get to this E, that is now the 7th we're playing of an E7 chord, which the obvious choice there would be to harmonize that with a diminished chord, or you could do a flat 13, or 13 flat 9 I should say. Like that. So we have, then what we've done is those last two notes are notes that you can use, they're in the key of E. So that's the 7th of E, that is the 5th of E. So we have, and then it leads perfectly to A. So if I was doing some of the stuff that I talked about in the first lesson, and then with this, you would get this sort of vibe, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it really sounds like we've actually landed on the 1 chord, but it is a bit of a trick because the A in this case isn't actually 1. We're just, making it sort of sound like we're going home. And the melody in there makes that whole transition much stronger because not only do we have chords that are reinforcing this sort of musical trick that we're going to a new key, but the melody there makes that heaps stronger. So these are a bunch of different things that you can do. So that means, like, if we're going to look at another example, you could go, if you've got E, they're just similar ideas that are based off exactly the same principle, B minor 7, E7, then to A. Now another thing that you'll probably find in a lot of blueses, like Sweet Home Chicago as an example, is it goes to chord 4 in bar 2. And you can do that, you can apply that in your solos, you can do a little bit of that in your comping, and it'll give you a little bit of that sort of sus sound. So you might go, then, now obviously if I had a bass player playing underneath me, this would give you a little bit more context about what I'm playing. But what I would encourage you to practice is in a blues in any key of your choice. In the 4th bar, insert a 2-5-1 of the chord you're going to. So the chord you're going to is going to be the 4 chord. So if you're in the key of A, for example, you would have 3 bars of A, and then the 4 chord of A is a D. Now remember, we want to think of that D as a temporary 1 chord or a temporary tonic. So we have to find out what the 2 of D is going to be. That would be an E minor 7. And the 5 of the D is going to be an A7. And you could play those chords. You can keep common tones. So for example, if we're doing in the key of A, like I just talked about, we could just do like really simple sort of comping. Then E minor. So there wasn't really a melody there, I'm sorry. I'm just holding a common tone. I went from an A9 to a B minor 9, then to a B9 sharp 5, sorry, an A9 sharp 5, and then down to a D. So these are sort of concepts that are not too crazy. It's just about thinking ahead. So rather than being a little bit at the whim of whatever the band's playing and you just play blues scale, you have to actually be projecting ahead and thinking, okay, I know what beat I'm in, what bar I'm in, and then I have this many beats until I have to play this 2/5, which is going to set up the next thing I do. And that's a thing that happens in country playing and definitely in jazz, is you're kind of always thinking ahead of what you're playing, because what you play now is going to affect what you're going to play in a bar or a few bars time. So have some fun with this stuff. Maybe try it with like really slow backing tracks. This will only come into your sort of vocabulary if you go through it really slowly, because you've got to be able to think fast enough to keep up with the changes. And I find when I was learning this stuff, even doing it at just a slow tempo, like say a slow performance tempo, is sometimes too fast for one's mind. I had to like slow things down so I was at an almost painfully slow tempo where I could kind of speak out aloud what I was doing, like going A, 2, 3, 4 to D. No, I'm going back to A. One more bar of A, and I got the 2/5 to D. Now I have E minor, then A. Now I've arrived at D, like that. So if you've got any questions, leave a comment, share it around. I'm going to do some more videos breaking down the next 4 bars of a blues and looking at turnarounds and other concepts that you can use in your comping and also in your soloing if you want to get a bit of the chord melody thing happening. So have fun with this, and I'll catch you next time.